While most MSPs are out there hunting endlessly for new clients, the smart ones know their richest opportunities lie in the fields they already own. My name's James Steele and this is Harvest, where MSPs and industry experts share proven ways to grow profitable revenue from your current customer base. No theory, no fluff, just field-tested strategies that work. Let's grow.
I built in the preface of building for profit. I started at the very moment, at the very first scratch of that pen on that bar table napkin was, how do I make money at this? And then I backed into what I was going to do. I didn't look at what the industry says I should be looking at. I looked at what I wanted to happen, and then I made my own KPIs. You're not thinking through how you're making money in your business. You're thinking through how that money is going to come in the door. That's the wrong way to approach that.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for coming back to this episode of Harvest, or if it's your first time, welcome along. It means a lot that you're here. Today we are talking to Juan Fernandez, who is Channel Chief of SuperOps. He's been there, he's done it. I really felt the pressure on this one, just to make sure that we used our time wisely and that I could really get that sort of tactical, actionable advice that we were looking for from this conversation. He's been on an awful lot of podcasts, he's very accomplished, so I really wanted to make sure that we got that from him. Hopefully that is the case. So we dive into some practical stuff about baking profitability into everything you do, why having a streamlined portfolio makes growth so much easier, and how to hold your ground on pricing. So if you're tired of the chaos that can come with running an MSP, Juan's got some straight talking advice worth hearing. Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Harvest. I've been really looking forward to this one. It's going to be a fun one. I'm here with Juan Fernandez of SuperOps fame. And the reason I'm so happy to be talking to Juan is he's got a wealth of experience for us to tap into, more than we can do in this episode. Not least, building his MSP to $20 million turnover revenue in only 6 years. We're authoring multiple books, the MSP Owner's Handbook. We've got a QBR edition and a SASE edition. He's doing wonderful things over at SuperOps, and he won Shark Tank. Juan Fernandez, how are you doing?
I'm fabulous, man, and it's such an honor to be here today, James. And thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while. We've been talking about it, and to be honest, we got started talking earlier, and we probably should have hit record, man. We're already into this thing, and I'm already having a great time. So it's such an honor to be here.
Lovely. Thanks, Juan. Listen, let's dive straight into it. This is all about actionable tactical advice for MSPs, and you've got a wealth of knowledge to draw upon. So I'm going to do that in a moment. But before we get started, there's a tradition on this show, and that is to ask you, what do people get wrong about you when they first meet you?
Yeah, they think I can speak Spanish. So many people think that, and it's kind of a funny story that I think I spend more time in my life, if I added up all the minutes that I've ever spent explaining why I'm Hispanic with a Hispanic name, coming from a Hispanic culture, and don't speak Spanish.
While we're on this topic of misconceptions, what is it that MSPs get wrong about that journey to profitable growth? What is it they do that isn't quite right in your mind?
I think we walk in with an expectation that it's easy. We sell ourselves this dream of everybody needs IT. That's the first fallacy. So for instance, you made a mention of how I went from 0 to 20 million in 6 years. That's the second iteration of something. The first one, I went 0 to 3 million, and it took me 4 years, right? And at that, it wasn't the best success. Like, I learned a lot of lessons on that. As a matter of fact, I landed up burning it to the ground originally. When I built my second one, I built in the preface of building for profit. I started at the very moment, at the very first scratch of that pen on that bar table napkin was, how do I make money at this? And then I backed into what I was going to do. Everything was surrounded around how to actually get to profitability at every moment, so that when the quarter went in, the dollar came out. So that's one of the misconceptions I think that we have. And again, it's not a thing that we do bad. It's just a lesson that we have to learn.
So tell me then, so you're writing on this napkin then, you're saying, right, I'm setting myself up for profit first. So there'll be a lot of MSPs listening to this that may be around the sort of 1 million, 2 million turnover mark. What should they be doing? What tactical points should they be looking at, do you think, to be sort of focused on that profit first? Where did you start out on that? What did that napkin look like?
The whole thing was every year, and I used to work on this often, was creating a business plan. and revisiting that thing and realizing, where am I making, what am I, who am I, and what am I doing? And truing yourself up to understand those things is really what it was all about. I wanted to create dream jobs. I wanted to be profitable. I wanted my employees to be happy. I wanted to deliver services customers wanted to buy. Like, I focused on the things that I wanted to do and the things that I wanted to happen. And then I built into that. So paying attention to my, average customer profitability, understanding the amount of tickets that, an end user should have or a customer should have, what amount should I have? Like, I didn't look at what the industry says I should be looking at. I looked at what I wanted to happen, and then I made my own KPIs. So, and I say this to a lot of MSPs, they ask me, Juan, all the time, like, what should I be focusing on? And I'm like, what do you want to happen? And they're like, this. And I'm like, okay, so focus on that. Well, what's the number that I should be focused on? I'm like, da, 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 da. Why do you want to be like everybody else? If I give you a number, you're asking me to be like everybody else. Why do you want to be like everybody else? You're asking.
There's some consistencies though, right? There must be some commonalities. I mean, generally most companies are going to say, okay, well, I want to reach, I want to have sustainable growth, happy workforce, good work-life balance. So, like, let's start off with the sustainable growth. Like, where would you focus? What would your metric be there? If I said to you, right, okay, I'm at 2 million, I really want to have a nice progressive path to 5. Where would you be looking specifically, would you say?
I would say that, 90% of what we were trying to do was understand our time to revenue and our time to profitability in every account. With that being said, anytime we were onboarding a customer, we onboarded a customer that we knew where our revenue was coming from. So I knew exactly how many people I was going to need to be hiring based on that. So when I scaled my location 0 to 16, I had 16 locations. We physically built across the entire United States. And everyone says, oh, well, you were probably in these major metros. No, I started in a city with 7,000 people. People, not businesses, people. In the corner of nowhere, Durango, Colorado. Like, trust me, there's snow and less people, right?
And less MSPs, presumably.
Oh, God.
Competition.
No. Well, I mean, the ones that were there had been there ages. It took me forever to get them out of there. So all of that was difficult. And so understanding that I needed to get to $20,000 in reoccurring revenue before I hired an employee was one of my metrics. So anytime I came into a city, I knew exactly that I need to get to $20,000 in reoccurring revenue before I would hire somebody. So I would stay there until I got to that number, and I knew that would take me less than 30 days to do.
I'm fascinated. So let's say we popped up a new location. Yeah. Tell me how do you start with that then? So you take on it. So who's there to begin with, and what kind of services are you doing? So what, employee wise? So you service it remotely first. You just
I just walk into a city and just be like, all right, here's where we're going to start offering services. Yep, and go get customers.
And then as you bring on more customers, who are you putting in place in terms of sort of boots on the ground? Then how does that look?
So you get to about 15,000 in recurring revenue, right? So that's 3 to 4 customers ish, depending on your pack. I knew exactly I needed 4, and with that, then I actually would hire the person in and have them come into those customers, start supporting them, and then help teach them how to go get new ones and watch them and teach them, show them, grow them, and then they saw it work. Right. And so then they're like, okay, cool. And I'm like, hey, you got this. Right around the second, we'd be around 30, getting ready to go to 40,000 a month in recurring revenue, around 35. I'm like, hey, you need a number 2 now. So I would hire a number 2 with them. And at 40,000, they were a team. And then I'd back up and let them run. So my biggest branch was $4 million and I had 4 people.
Okay, so admittedly, not every MSP is going to be popping up sites quite as frequently as Juan was during his heyday. However, there's some really good advice in here, I think, around setting revenue thresholds before hiring. So Juan had a figure that he kept in mind before he made a new hire. So when he opened a new location, he'd basically wait until he hit that level of income before he would then hire. So the takeaway here, calculate your fully loaded employee cost. Make sure you know what that is, then set a minimum revenue figure before you add any staff. This basically forces you then to maximize your existing resources rather than growing headcount too early. I'm interested to know, seeing as you've literally written a book on the topic, when it comes down to regular conversations with your customers and being able to frame those outcome conversations, What do you think is a good way for MSPs to handle those communications and kind of tier them maybe based on the sort of the potential of the clients?
It was a constant relationship. It was a ongoing relationship. This is why I wrote the QBR edition first. 90% of businesses that are out there in the SMB space are just like you. They don't know how to grow and scale their business. That's the fallacy that I thought everybody that had a business knew what they were doing. No, they don't. Ironically, and it was the first time that I was bringing systematical processes to an industry and all my customers that never had seen anything like this before. And they were like, can I get some of that? I'm like, but I sell this. And they're like, yeah, I know, but I want some of that.
Your customers are in business, but that doesn't mean they've got it any more figured out than you do. And you've got an opportunity here to look at what you're doing well in your business and actually overlay that with how you can help your clients. So what Juan's talking about here is business process gaps in their operations. And he was a bit of a master at this. He got to the point where his clients basically, they valued his processes and his systems probably more than his tech expertise in a lot of cases. So a starting point as some actionable takeaways: identify 2 to 3 operational inefficiencies in your client's business that overlay with strengths that you have in your own, things that you're doing. Explain exactly how what you're doing can fix the problems that they're having, and then document it. Make sure you've documented the improvements with clear metrics, and ideally creating a case study if you can that's really showcasing that business impact. Can you tell me how that looked? Because you obviously did, well, as you say, you did way more than just the tech, and so those processes and things. Like how are you packaging that? Because you must have had some sort of standardization. You couldn't have scaled to the level you did without some sort of standardization there in terms of what you could offer.
Yeah, that's what we called everything as a service, right? We had a whole mantra around providing quality products and services that everyone could afford, and adding so much value they could afford not to.
Yes.
So I say there's 3 different lenses in managed services. There's being in practice, right? There's having a practice, and then there's best practice. And so I have been, in the industry for a long time and certified in a number of different things, always trying to understand the best practice around technology service delivery and understanding the problem and paying attention to the problem and looking for ways to solve the problem. And so a lot of what we sold to the customer was the removal of problems. And it came in all aspects, right? Like I worked with HP to create HP DAS. I was HP Innovator of the Year because I created something new where I took their product and made it do something they didn't know it did, and made it a whole market product, and they decided to take it to market after.
The concern there, though, is there'll be MSPs listening to this will be like, oh, brilliant. So the key to this is I need to play with more tech.
So I was very refined in my partnerships. So I had a handful of partners, and that stayed that way for the majority of my entire time, because when I think about the due diligence, I'm trying to answer the question, because many of you have heard, why don't you buy and sell me this? I used to use this when I worked somewhere else. And it's like, because I don't know. Like, you don't really have an answer to that. I did. I told them, I was like, hey, speaking of which, here's why we made the decision, because we interviewed 25 vendors, and this is exactly the solution to these problems that we're trying to solve. And I know they use that in that industry, but that was actually a point tool that was actually for an IT company, and this is for a managed services company. And here are the nuances in which we deliver this technology, and here's the effective ways, and here's the outcomes, and here's the price points, and here's all the ABCDFGG. But they asked the question, and I was able to answer it. That built trust. And I said, here's the margin that I'm marking this up to make. And I'm being honest about that with you, because this is how I make money.
So how does your time as somebody who's running the MSP, like how does your day look? Because it sounds to me like you're spending all your time understanding the tech to the most degree you possibly could, and the processes to the most degree you could. Like, were you like just heading notes, and like what did it look like?
I mean, I actually actively A/B tested everything, right? So like I'll build a process, and again, I think that I talk about this all the time, that whole people, process, technology thing is wrong. That's a bullshit. It's actually in the wrong order. It's actually, as a leader, I build processes that enable people that deliver a technology that equals profitability, which equals great cultures and great companies. So we used to call ourselves, in my sales team, we didn't even call them sales reps. We called them solutioneers, because all I taught them to do was how to solve problems and talk and think that way, and to never pitch. So I say it all the time, I'm not selling anything. I'm guaranteeing success. I'm not selling, you can't buy anything from me, but you can experience success with me, right? Like that's a completely different approach to the way anybody feels. Like they're like, damn, that's bold. And I'm like, and as a matter of fact, when we get down to the end of this in our 12-month, you'll record a video with me telling how technology moved you forward. And if I don't get that, then I failed. And they're like, what? I'm like, dude, I'll refund your money for the whole year. That's how confident I am in what we're doing. And I would put our ass on the line all the time. I had film crews that would go out there and record video testimonies, get those customers talking about it. I mean,
You actually did it. You actually made it
oh
happen
yeah,
at the
we
end of
did
the
it.
12 months.
There's no
Very good.
bullshit around. I'm not saying I didn't do. Dude, go look. Like the videos are all still. They're all still out there. Like these customers would just tell. I mean, dude, we had drug rehabilitation centers where we talked about how we changed people's lives with technology, like how we implemented technology and like people that were drug addicted, and like they were talking about how the programs that were there and the technology, like how it saved their lives from death. Like it was crazy the stuff we heard. So this is the impact that I think we don't know we have is the outcomes that we're delivering to those customers. And that's where, if you don't understand what you do and what you're actually doing, you seem like you're just selling product and you're just fixing a problem. And that's not what we do. We actually,
This is where getting streamlined is really important, isn't it? Because otherwise you can't do it for everything. You almost need to niche.
yeah, I have to be very, very focused on what I deliver. And I need to know that I deliver that thing every single time, like without a doubt, right? Like I have to guarantee that it's going to happen. And if my program and process doesn't do that, then I'm full of shit. And that's a bad place to be in a reputation.
Why is it so important to have such a streamlined portfolio?
It's focus, man. Like here's the thing: it's a death of a thousand cuts in a house of mirrors, right? Like I don't know where I'm going to get it from today. Like, and that's a dangerous place to be. That's chaotic. It's scary. It's uncertain. It creates friction in your ecosystem. Like your team hates it. Just so you know, like I do this all the time with MSPs, and I'm like, hey, let's go through this. Let's drop this quarter in. And it's funny because I say, okay, you got a new customer, go. And I'm like, I ask the business owner, and they're like, they tell me what happens. I'm like, cool. All right, drew that out. Go sit down. Go over here. Sit in the corner. Now, team, new customer comes in. Go. What happens? Oh, Tony jumps over the couch. Chris takes 5 days off. Mary leaves the building and like gets sick immediately. I'm like, whoa, why? And they're like, have you ever seen our stack? There's no, like, we don't, like, we hope it works every time.
Is this sounding at all familiar? I love this when Juan reveals the reality here. Tony jumps over the couch. Chris takes 5 days off. Mary gets sick immediately. Brilliant. This chaos comes from just trying to do too much. So look at which 20% of your services make most of your profit and focus there. When your team delivers the same things repeatedly, they get really good at it. The staff stop panicking and delivery becomes more predictable and clients get consistent results. It also really helps with just general, morale and staff retention, as Juan was talking about there. This episode is sponsored by Sales Builder, where I work. I really wanted to tell you about us because I see so many MSP sales teams buried in admin instead of talking to customers and building relationships. We help you automate your sales process with standardized product catalogs and professional proposals. Our service matrix, or the white space module, that's the bit that shows you visually where the opportunities are in your customer base, from service gaps to upcoming renewals. Everything links directly with your PSA and, of course, your distributors. If you'd like to free up your sales team's time and spot more revenue opportunities, simply connect with me on LinkedIn or head to salesbuilder.com. Let's get back to it. That's really interesting. I haven't heard many people talk about that, honestly, that idea of, okay, put a coin in and then exactly what happens. Like, what's a good way for someone sitting listening to this thinking, I wonder if my process is a bit like that. What would be a good practical way to start looking at that?
Like it's it's funny because I used to do it to sales teams all the time. Any new salesperson, I'd be like, all right, come in. All right, what's the top 3 sales questions you're going to ask the customer? Do you know about AI? Do you know about cybersecurity? And do you have a backup plan? And I'm like, interesting. Those all don't work. Those are horrible questions. And they're like, why? I'm like, where did you get them? And they're like, well, I looked them up, like ChatGPT, like those are the top 3 things that like most of businesses like would like really resonate with. And I'm like, yeah, we don't do any of that. So why would you ask that question? And they're like, oof, we don't do that. I'm like, no, we don't do anything with that. But no. I said, we have things that do that, but we don't do that. That's like something we do, but that's not what we do. And cybersecurity, like, yeah, we don't know about anything about that. We're just best practice by design. So we don't offer that. And then on the other end of the stick, yeah, backups. That's not something we really do either. It's just native. It's part of it. It's not what we do. It's part of what we do. And so it was very interesting. And so rather than just pop a board salesperson, we did a lot of deal autopsies. And what we would do is we understood the questions that we asked that led back to what we do so that we could talk about the process in which we deliver it. And that is essential to selling, because if I'm asking you random questions, I'm just going down it just to fill space. So we were very deliberate in what we asked. And I said, watch, ask these 5 questions and watch what happens. And they're like, okay. And then they'd come back and they'd be like, I'm like, what happened? Well, they said yes. And I'm like, and then you told them about our process, right? Yeah. And then you got a signed deal, right? And they're like, it was actually really easy. And I was like, so like that whole making IT simple was my job, was to make the service delivery, the sale and the delivery and the win simple.
So this kind of ties in with the business process point Juan was making before, but basically he got his team to stop asking generic questions about AI or cybersecurity or whatever it might be, and instead, make sure they were listening first and foremost, but also that they were focusing on specific pain points they knew they were positioned to address, things they could do well. So my actionable takeaway for you is maybe think about 3 to 5 questions based on problems you've solved particularly well, and get your team thinking about those a little bit more, maybe bringing them into conversations more often when they can. We have a section on our chat called Industry Manure. And this is basically stuff that you hear in the industry that just isn't right, that really grinds your gears, that pops up all the time. Can you think of anything?
The whole point of why I came back to give away my models for free is exactly why, because I heard a lot of stuff that wasn't right. And
Go on, what's the top of your list? What's the worst one?
It's like everyone needs to have, like, they need to be run towards cybersecurity. Like the other one that really kills me is follow frameworks. Like that particular one is why I did what I did to come back and give away my models and taught the whole time I was building it, is because I was building for something completely different in a completely different way. And I was building toward profitability instead of toward frameworks that waste time. I see a lot of people say, this is really good for us, and I'm sure it is, but we laid that down on our highly operationalized component. That was a dumpster fire. And so,
yeah, I think that's probably a growth maturity thing, isn't it? A business maturity thing. Perhaps it benefits some, but if you're at a stage where you're highly systemized and have the processes already, perhaps that's not an ideal one.
We wanted to try to see if it was, relevant, and like it was rough.
Question from the last guest. Now, our last guest was Yuri van der Schleich. So he's a sales expert from the Netherlands, and he was saying, look, let's say you're in a negotiation and you don't want to drop the price. What are ways to show value without saying that you provide great service or that you have this lot of value? What are strategies to keep your margin without saying stuff that everyone else says as well?
I love this question, and I get it a lot. And I used to love dealing with this at the deal table. And I'll say, one of the things early on in my conversation with a customer was honesty around where I make money. And telling them that, in our products and services and in hardware, we have X percentage of markup, in software, X percent. And inside of our service and support, we actually have a margin as well. And these are our margin numbers, and I used to give them out. But that being said, when this would come up in the negotiation phase of the deal, people would say, Juan, I love this. I really want to do business with you, but man, this is way more expensive than I was hoping for. And I knew it was going to be more, but I didn't think it was going to be this much more. And I would say to them, I said, I really appreciate that you recognize that there is this. And I thank you for not, just saying that you don't see the value in it. But here's the thing. There's a cost of doing business, and there's a cost of doing good business. Now, I would say that I could drop my price, but the challenge with me dropping my price I will ask you this question. This is the service and support that you want right now, right? You want this. You would love to have this. So you could see your business being successful with this. But if I drop my price, would you be okay with less service and support and basically putting you right back to where you are? And they're like, well, no. I said, well, that's what you're asking for. You actually want to go right back to where you were, not where you need to be. And they're like, well, no, I want that for this. And I'm like, well, that doesn't cost that though, because if I do that, my cost of service and support, I can't give you this high level of service and support as a business, because then I would be out of business. And if I'm out of business, you can't have that. So there's a cost of me delivering this to you. That question was one of my favorites. And I will always love that question, because that's where you true up who you are and whether or not you know what you're doing in business. That is the ultimate checkmate moment, to know whether or not you have defined your products and services and know how to do business. Everybody pushes that button, and it's your choice whether or not you will be able to answer that I know what it takes to run a good, effective business, or drop your price. And that tells me that you don't know how to run a good business. So that's not a shot, but it definitely tells me that you're probably going to be struggling with that customer down the road, and you're probably going to be struggling with your employees when they ask for a raise, and you're probably going to be struggling when you have a higher overhead, because you're not thinking through how you're making money in your business. You're thinking through how that money is going to come in the door. That's the wrong way to approach that. So that's my thought.
Now, this for me is a theme that you see within the best performing MSPs. When clients push for lower prices, Juan explained that lower prices meant reduced service. Would you be okay with less service and support? Okay, so be clear about the connection between price and service quality. This approach maintains margins by helping clients understand that they can't get the same service for less money. The price reflects the value that's being delivered. Juan took it a step further and was completely transparent about his margins, which I think is a really interesting approach too. So listen, Juan, it's time for you to pass the pitchfork. Which basically means I need a question from you, if you don't mind, for our next, could be MSP, could be an industry expert. What question would you like to ask them that's going to really put them on the spot?
This is very near and dear to my heart, and this is a question I ask everybody and I have a whole thing coming. This is like my whole new talk track for 2025. MSP 5.0.
5.0.
5.0.
Okay.
Day one, what do we do now?
And we'll just leave it there. I mean, that's such a broad question. Do you want to clarify it any further, or are we just going to leave it there?
I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it for the next person.
Because great. You've really teed it up nicely, haven't you?
I'm curious about what everybody says we do when this day comes. And it's not that far away.
When is 5.0? 5 years?
I don't think it's 5 years, but I think that's another question you're going to ask the next person.
Yes, I will do. Finally, to close, thank you so much for spending some time with me. Honestly, it's been great. Can you give us a yell from the barn? So this is your shameless plug. What are you up to at the moment? Where would you like to direct anyone's eyeballs and ears?
Absolutely. You know, I came to solve a problem that I saw. Again, I talk a lot about solving problems, and one of the ones that I couldn't leave the industry without solving was the death of 1,000 cuts in managed services, and that's where I'm at now here with SuperOps, is trying to solve the existential question about how do we run to profitability? How do we become more efficient? And how do we use artificial intelligence to actually drive us forward? And so you want to find out more, come ping me on LinkedIn. You can find me there on LinkedIn, Juan Fernandez. Type in Juan Fernandez MSP and you'll find me. Also, come over to SuperOps, superops.com. Take a look at all the things that we're doing over there. Lots of new innovations around a fully unified platform for the MSP of today and tomorrow.
Juan, I feel like I could have had a 5-hour interview with you potentially. There was so many areas that we could have dived into, but thank you. Giving us loads of gold. Hopefully we'll see you again.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. James, thanks for having me. Cheers to your success, and also appreciate all the folks over at Sales Builder for having me. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Likewise. All the best. Take care. And so there you have it, Juan Fernandez. Juan built his MSP by starting with profit before technology. His honest approach to pricing, to standardized services, and the focus on business outcomes rather than tech got clients actually recording success videos on a regular basis and talking about some pretty incredible impact on their companies. The big takeaway here: stop the chaos. Know exactly what makes you money and don't be afraid to charge properly for it. Okay, that is it for this episode of Harvest. If you found this useful, all the links we mentioned are in the show notes. And of course, if you enjoyed it, please do leave us a review and share it with a friend, or even better, someone else in the industry who you know would get value from it. Until next time, happy harvesting.